Back in 2010, I owned a Wii, and with that Wii, I owned a few cool Wii games. Stuff like Super Mario Galaxy, Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports, classic games that everybody remembers. But I had a problem. None of these games included mild language or animated blood. That's right, I needed something T-rated. And what game is more T-rated? And what game is more T-rated than Red Steel 2? Become a samurai cowboy in Wild West Japan using motion controls. Wow, this is great. The only problem is, my thumbs were covering two circles that tell you not to buy the game. Red Steel 2 claims to be the first game exclusively designed for the Wii Motion Plus. And of course, you need a nunchuck too. All you can do is pray that the nunchuck is able to connect to the Wiimote through these janky connections. I would recommend getting one of those fancy schmancy Motion Plus built-in controllers if you can. Anyways, let's launch the game and check it out. We start off with an intro movie showing a time-lapse of Ubisoft's creativity. Once we make a new save, we get a taste of the story, and like any good story, it starts off with the protagonist tied to a moving vehicle. Eventually you fight stock bad guy 1 and he steals your magic sword, but you get away, blah blah blah. This story is not mind-blowing. It's your typical revenge story that has you beating up a few different bad guy gangs to take out their respective bad guy leaders. Also, sorry for the weird lines on the cutscene, that's just what my emulator did. I think it still looks better than the original cutscenes. And don't worry about the fact that this game is a sequel, it might as well not be. Red Steel 2 is apparently a direct upgrade from the first game, plus it's a standalone title, so it truly doesn't matter if you played the first one since there's no story connection. A lot of the footage I'll be showing was captured in an emulator with upscaled resolution. If you're playing this on an actual Wii, it'll be a lot fuzzier, but the frame rate seems to stay very high. One thing you'll immediately notice about this game is its unique, one-of-a-kind art style that it stole from Borderlands. It's got that sort of comic book, cartoon, cel-shaded look, which means its graphics have aged somewhat gracefully. Well, from a distance. Once you get up close, it looks pretty bad. And you've gotta love the crappy motion-captured cutscene animations. Alright, so it looks like a 2010 Wii game, but how does it play? Well, you start off with only your trusty revolver. This works just like a light gun game. You aim at the screen and click the B button to shoot stuff like bad guys and boxes. Mostly boxes. There's a whole lot of things you can break in this game, and of course everything is packed to the brim with money. In this world, you earn more money breaking people's air conditioners than fixing them. Eventually you get a sword, and that's when you really get to experience the combat. It's a little bit of motion control hack and slash mixed with a little bit of light gun, but it's sort of also an RPG with upgrades to earn and combos to learn. It's super cool to shoot a guy in the face and run him through with a katana, and that's no different here in Red Steel 2. When everything is working, this game is like nothing else. It's a unique flavor of exhilarating action-packed combat, but at some point during most fights, things stop working for a second. All of a sudden, you can't do a certain move because of some inconsistency in the motion controls, and it totally interrupts the flow. You kinda need to figure out which moves are reliable and which ones aren't. The motion controls really aren't bad, but I'm not sure that I'd agree with the back of the box, which claims that you'll experience unmatched precision control with the Wii Motion Plus. Finally, wielding a sword feels as real as you'd always dreamed! Then you clearly haven't tried every Wiimote accessory. But for real, the motion controls are pretty fun. I do enjoy using some amount of energy while playing a game. It makes me feel less like I'm dwindling into a total state of atrophy. As you progress, you're introduced to a few characters that give you your quest for the rest of the game. At first, you only have one quest at a time, but you start to get side quests that you can complete while working on the main quest. These are things like shooting wanted posters or activating radio towers. I really like side objectives like these. They give you a reason to explore while you're going through a new area, but I also kinda hate them. See, when it asks you to break 10 wanted posters, there are 10 of them. So if you happen to miss just one of them, you're gonna have to wander around aimlessly with like no FOV through confusingly similar areas with countless loading screens. Luckily, you can choose to just not do those missions if they're too tedious for you. Same with breaking barrels and stuff, it's just for extra money. Okay, no, you've gotta break all the barrels, come on. But I think the game's biggest issue is those loading screens. They are so frequent, and some of them take nearly 10 seconds, which doesn't sound like long, but it's just long enough to make you consider whether or not you still want to be playing the game. But ultimately, these are really little issues in the grand scheme of things. This game is still a lot of fun. Even when I'm not deleting someone with a shotgun, there's still enough going on to keep my hyperactive brain occupied. I'm talking about the ambience. I'm not sure what I expected the Wild Wild East to look or sound like, but they've done a great job blending those themes and making the world feel immersive. Sure, the music isn't really remarkable, but it's very fitting and it does its job perfectly. And so does the sound design. Everything you do has some kind of audio feedback to keep you aware of your surroundings, so you know if you've landed a hit, or if you're being snuck up on, or when you've hit a telephone. On top of that, there are all kinds of fun little ambient sounds that play while you're just walking around. If you can find some way to connect headphones to the Wii, this game is so much fun to listen to. The dark tunnels of a mysterious cave, the dozens of incense sticks burning in an empty temple, these things are what kept me from getting bored when there was nothing to shoot at. I really love this setting, although that might just be because I have nostalgia for it. To me, playing Red Steel 2 is like being transported into a world where two cultures are blended together to create something that feels both foreign and familiar. Or in other words, it's like going to a Chinese buffet in Arizona. The environment always remained interesting enough to keep me going through even when the gameplay had some hiccups. Like for example, learning combos is kind of a pain. Every time you buy a new combo, you have to train on a dummy, which is fine, but they have you repeat the move 3 times every time you learn a new one. But this process was made much more enjoyable by the funny glitches that my emulator produced with the live action demonstrations. Okay, geez, I'm not sure I'm ready for this move. Alongside combos, you can purchase upgrades to your gear, which I didn't know until pretty far in. It turns out you can click on your gun after you buy it to see a skill tree, and there are little ammo packs next to the guns that you can refill and also upgrade. I'm pretty sure the game never told me about this, so my guns were super underpowered for a while there. Plus, there are perks that don't show up until you're far enough in the game, so you need to keep checking in on old gear for new upgrades. But even when you do upgrade the guns, they aren't all perfectly balanced. It seems that the shotgun is really what you want to spend your money on, since it does super high damage. You can even unlock a perk that makes it shred through armor, which kinda lets you skip some fights without having to use your sword or your brain. That is, whenever you're able to find ammo, because the ammo economy in this game is pretty scarce. But these issues honestly have a very small effect on how fun it is to upgrade a gun and blast someone with it. The upgrades feel so worth it. It's a noticeable improvement in your ability to handle difficult situations. And if you don't prepare for those situations, you may get stuck. I didn't notice too many difficulty spikes, but I was playing on medium difficulty. Then again, if you do get stuck, you can just spam powerful slashes like a maniac, but that takes a lot of IRL stamina. There are just some things that I don't feel properly adjust as you work your way through the game. Like for example, these safe vault things always give you $3,000 no matter how far you are in the game.
$3,000. Because I don't think you'll ever be worth more than $3,000.
And I never ended up with enough time to even get close to all the upgrades, and once you beat the game, it just sorta locks that save at the final boss. I really hate when games do this. There's no checkmark or anything that tells you that you've completed the game on that save. Instead, it just doesn't save after beating the final boss, so all you can do is refight him. And speaking of the conclusion, the story gets kinda messy near the end. Okay, so Red Steel 2 is on a train chasing the final boss when the train explodes. Then he drunkenly wanders around an abandoned town and then falls off a cliff. And then you just kinda end up at the final boss. That's not really spoilers, just a gist of how things go later. And the funniest part is, several of the NPCs just end up in the same place as you somehow. Like you end up falling down into a cave system, and guess what? Your generic bald Chinese master trainer guy just happens to have a backup dojo down here that he's hanging out in for some reason. Just don't expect much out of the story and you'll be able to have fun with it. But I am a little concerned that Red Steel 2 might not be replayable for some people, mainly because losing all your combos is really jarring. You can still do a dash and then shoot, but it won't trigger the special move unless you unlock it. This could make you feel super restricted until you can re-obtain those combos you like. But if you can get used to a more basic setup at the beginning, this game is surprisingly enjoyable to replay, despite it seeming like a novelty. Red Steel 2 isn't the perfect game. It's got plenty of issues that I'm sure you'll notice if you ever decide to play through it. In fact, I had a glitch happen pretty late in the game that wouldn't let me progress to the next chapter, so I ended up having to restart that entire chapter, which is a good hour of gameplay. Now I won't lie to you and say that I didn't furiously speedrun that area so I could hurry up and finish this game so that I could actually make this video, which didn't happen that week because I ran out of time and had to make a last-second Mario Kart track video, but I legitimately enjoy playing this game, that tragedy aside. But then it got worse. After I played through the chapter, the emulator would crash every time I went through the door, so I had to move my save to the Wii and ran a bunch of cables through other cables to record significantly crappier footage of the rest of the game. Luckily, this is the perfect game to let out some aggression by brutalizing anything and anyone stupid enough to exist in your vicinity. If you want to be a gunslinging swordsman in the most 2010 T-rated setting imaginable, this game will certainly suit your needs. Sure, the motion controls can be a little iffy sometimes, but who knows, maybe I was doing the moves wrong. Maybe the emulator had it right. It's got very engaging gameplay that almost feels like VR before VR. Sure, it might be a little goofy to stand up while playing a video game, but you want to know what's really goofy? Heart disease. Well, I hope I was able to give you enough information on Red Steel 2 so that now you know whether or not it's something you want to try out. And on a side note, what is wrong with you? Who watches a Red Steel 2 review? Well, either way, I appreciate you watching. Thanks.